I have a lot of lights in this room. It's a lot of light to get enough light to get a good picture on these video cameras. But if I go outside in the sunlight, how much more light we have now. It may not appear to much, but I had to stop the cameras down. When I brought the cameras out, all you could see was white in the same settings of inside. The light is so much greater. And in this passage that we're looking at today, the whole concept of light and radiance and glory are all tied together. So let's look at what Paul is talking about when he talks about the surpassing glory that we have now.
An interest in the Savior's blood, died he for me, who caused his pain, for me who him to death pursued.
So here we are in 2 Corinthians, and in chapter 3, in verse 10, it says, "For what was glorious has no glory now in comparison with the surpassing glory." Again, for what was glorious has no glory now in comparison with the surpassing glory. What is being compared here? All along through this entire several paragraphs, Paul is comparing the old covenant with Israel, that God made with Israel, and the new covenant that God has made with both Israel and all of mankind who will accept it. The old covenant was offered to Israel for Israel to accept in the wilderness. The new covenant is offered to all of mankind for each individual to accept individually. It seems that the old covenant was very glorious. We look at it. Here was the fire and smoke on the mountain. All of these tremendous miracles, all of these great wonders and signs in the desert. The mountain shook. People were afraid to go on the mountain, and they were forbidden to go on the mountain. And the law was revealed, burned into tablets of stone written by God's own finger. And what we have here, to a lot of people's appearance, we have a poor carpenter who only taught for 3 years and was rejected. Glory? And yet Paul says the glory of what is now is so much greater than the glory of the previous. Let's look at that again. For what was glorious, the old covenant, the coming of that covenant in the desert at Mount Sinai, for what was glorious has no glory now in comparison with the surpassing glory. That covenant was so glorious that when Moses spoke to God and got the words of the covenant, his face would shine. Light would come from his face. The light of the glory of God. And it was so bright that the people could not bear to look upon it. That's why I'm comparing it to the light that we're using today. But compared to what we have now, it's nothing. It's little. And that's what we're going to be going into as we go verse by verse, as Paul keeps expanding and expanding and expanding on this concept of the glory of then and the glory of what we have now. And although we don't have the mountain shaking, what is really happening for the past 2,000 years in Christ Jesus, in his called out people, we use the word church, it means the called out people. In his called out people is more glorious than what happened